This is where I get the raw books that end up like these graded books. Hey there, today I have an unboxing video, and in this video I'm going to open up a set of comic books that I won at auction from the seller Infinity Comics on the platform HipComic. This is a small shipment of books that I won, but it really is an example of some of the comics that end up going through my entire process that end up slabbed, like the books behind me, where if you watch my recent CGC unboxing video, I make note of setting the books off for pressing and what kind of books I look for, what books do I look for that have certain conditions or defects and so forth. And in this unboxing, I'll show you some of the books that are really part of that process. And what I'm going to do with this video that's a little bit different from my other unboxing videos is I'm going to grade every book. So you're going to see the actual assigned grade that I give to the book instead of typically during the order summary section of the video, I'll just kind of throw up a 9.4, 9.8, or show you what the advertised condition is and map that to a grade point. So then you can kind of see how those numbers play alongside fair market values and graded values. And I'll still do that at the end, except I'm going to use the actual assigned grades that I assigned to the books, along with whether or not the books could be improved with a clean or press. And so then you can also see the ultimate decision that I plan on making with the book, where I have my automated spreadsheet decision engine help me determine what I'm going to do. So when I get to the unboxing, I'll show you which comics I won at auction, and then I'll go through each book in detail to show you the grade out of the bag and board, where you'll see the actual grade that I assigned the book and why that's important as it drives ultimately my decision as far as what do I want to do with the book. So let's get to it. Okay, here is the shipment that I received from Infinity Comics. These books I won at auction around February of 2024. And Infinity Comics, if you ever win any books from them, they're very quick with their turnaround. When you pay for your auction wins, they pretty much ship the book the next day. Gets right into your hands very quickly. They always mark every box with the Fragile sticker. I think it's French for something, but I think it's just to expedite the books to get them in your hands safely and securely. But I always appreciate their fast turnaround time, as they're always on top of processing your shipment after payment and getting the books to you very quickly. So let me go ahead and get this opened up. All right, not too bad. Let's take a look at the books that I won at auction and take a look at the grade of the book as well. The first one is Amazing Spider-Man number 188, particularly a tough book. As you can see, it's super, super dark. Can barely make out Spider-Man there. Dave Cockrum on cover art for Amazing Spider-Man 188. The second appearance of Jigsaw, where Jigsaw, I think, is more well known for being a Punisher villain. And let's take a look. So I have changed a little bit of my technique. I got some feedback about folks that were nervous about me holding the book on its own, and so I always hold it now with the backing board, and I try not to press my fingers too much on the book, especially right here is fingerprints will get on it. So I kind of just lightly and gently hold the backing board and slide the book around and pull my fingers off the book so quickly, so not to leave fingerprints. Anyway, so the first thing that I will start to look at is just going through the edges very quickly. And as I use the light, you can see the bottom probably already needs a press. So as soon as I see something where there's a pressable defect, I already know that I'm going to leave that indicator. But that bottom already being what it is, I'm thinking probably 9.6, 9.4. And then zooming in on the corners, the corner looks to be just slightly blunted. So then I'm thinking probably 9.2. It does have a stacking crease. The spine looks to be okay. There's a couple of spine ticks right in there, and then I'm dropping it already to a 9, as these right here by Spider-Man's hand break color. And then the top is probably just a mirror of the bottom, where it just needs to be pressed out. Just some wrinkling and lifting on the top edge, and then again going from corner to corner. That one looks pretty good. This one looks okay as well. So still, I would keep it in kind of that 9.0 range. The back is it's fine. It feels like it's just tanned slightly. I don't see anything right away that would push it beyond a 9, so that's probably where I'm going to end up. And again, a pressable defect, just like a slight finger bend right there on the back. And then, because it does have a little bit of tanning or possibly even some staining right in here, I just saw another crease there in that Lego ad. I was kind of holding on to that 9.0 grade, but then what I'll end up doing is giving it an 8.5. I'll drop it a grade just because I prefer to be, I don't want to say conservative with my grading. What I mean is I'll err on the side of caution, like maybe there is something I missed, or something like this corner is more severe than maybe I would think at first glance, or something like that. So 8.5, and I'll mark it clean and press versus just a press, just because it does have a little bit of staining that I'm not saying that a clean could get the stain out or some of that discoloration, but it's possible that with some light erasing it could. So it will be an 8.5 clean and press on this one. All right, already looks better in fresh bag and board. I always use the same size bag and boards. Love using the BCW Silver Age for those. Next we have, I love this one, Amazing Spider-Man 201, John Romita cover art featuring the Punisher. Any of these early Amazing Spider-Man with Punisher. Same thing with Black Cat. Early Black Cat, early Punisher covers, stories, character appearances are always fun. Love this one too, with the magenta target in the background. And you just can't go wrong with the John Romita Senior cover. Would have preferred if this one were a direct copy, as newsstands were far more common in the late 70s and early 80s. But let's take a look at the condition of this one. One thing I'll note too is I try not to look at the advertised condition of the book as I'm grading these, because I don't want to be influenced. I will show these in the order summary. I'll show you what they were listed as, and then what my final grade was, and just kind of see how they line up. Let's take a look. Same thing. So I'll try and go a little faster each time and just kind of point out what I notice. I do see some scratches right here in the trade. It's possible that that could come out with some humidity. The top edge looks really straight. Corner just barely blunted, but more or less really solid corner there for the age of the book. Color break here right by the staple. There's some stress there. A handful of spine ticks, just minor. They do break color. And then some softening of the corner down here as well. And I'm seeing something that I still don't quite know how to deal with. I forget what this is called, but it's something related to kind of how the paper rolled through the printer, and sometimes the paper would get caught and bunch up. There's probably a more technical term for that. But the problem is it doesn't really necessarily break color, but it does collect dirt and some other things, so it just kind of stands out. I try not to influence my grade based on something like that, because you could argue that's manufacturing and then you just ignore it. But from a presentation standpoint, it does bother me. So just from the front defects, again, I'm looking at similarities to ASM 188, where I gave that an 8.5. This one's probably getting close to an 8 already, just because of the printer issue here. The front cover is just slightly dirty as well, the scratch in the trade. And then as I flip the book over, everything looks to be okay. Nothing really stands out as far as anything else that would bring the condition down. There is additional dirt along the spine here on the back, so that would have to be dealt with, but not really too bad otherwise. If I had started on the back cover, I'd probably keep it around a 9.2, 9.4, but just some general dirt. And again, I'm kind of stuck here on this one. I don't know if I should go down a grade, but I'm not a professional grader, and so I can't really make the call as far as what this would do to the grade. So once again, if I'm settling it at an 8, I'm going to give this a 7.5. I think what I'm trying to figure out is, would a press actually help this book? I don't see a lot of pressable defects. I think I'm just going to leave it. Although I feel like if it needs a clean, it'd be difficult just to clean a book and not press it, just because sometimes cleaning introduces some areas. So I don't think I've ever marked a book just clean only. So I'll just kind of give it the default clean and press. So it's 7.5 clean and press on ASM 201. All right, fresh bag and board, 7.5 clean and press, ASM 201. The next book is Amazing Spider-Man 226. Just as I mentioned, early Punisher appearance. Love collecting early Black Cat appearances. Cover art by John Romita Jr. On this one, senior on the previous ASM 201. Interesting where they ended up signing the book there. A pretty neat perspective cover. Definitely something you don't see all the time on comic book covers. And let's take a look at the condition of this one. So just at first glance, moving it in and out of the light, cover looks to be pretty good, pretty flat. I don't see a lot of pressable defects per se. I think this one for me is going to end up being issues with the corners. That's just slightly soft, so then I'm kind of working backwards, 9.6. Just a tiny dimple on the cover right there by my thumb. This corner having some softening just around the edge there. So again, moving kind of backward, 9.6, possibly 9.4. A few color breaks as we zoom in on the spine right in here. And then now just keep rolling back the grade as we go along, probably 9.2. Cover is slightly dirty too, and I don't know if that could also be a stain in the barcode. Corner, it's hard to tell, but it just has some slight blunting to it, but not too bad. So I'm holding on to that 9.0 grade. Definitely some creasing in the top area of the book, so it definitely needs a press and probably, again, clean and press, but not too bad. 9.0 is where I am kind of holding up. And then looking at the back, it is quite dirty on the back. There's even, it looks like to be some, I don't think that's foxing. It's almost like rusting or even just some general staining. Lots of staining over here, so I'd probably pull it down a full grade to an 8.0. But I don't see as many problems with this book as the other two ASMs. It feels like an 8.0 primarily because of the stains, but because of the severe staining on the back, I have to drop it down to kind of a final grade, I think, of 7.5 clean and press. All right, those were the 3 Amazing Spider-Man issues that I picked up at auction, all in that 7.5 to 8.5 range, all with the opportunity for some improvement. I just don't know how much improvement on those. Particularly the back covers are pretty nasty. So let's move on to the next one. Here we have Batman 345. This is the first appearance of Dr. Death in the Bronze Age. And it is a floating head cover, so this also means his first cover appearance, just because there it's a skull. I imagine that's the head of the diabolical Dr. Death himself. Let's check out the condition for Batman 345. This is from 1982. Gene Colan and Dick Giordano on cover art on this one. Now this looks to be really nice in terms of the spine. I guess we'll start here in the corner. Corner looks sharp. Spine looks very well put together. I want to double check it before I say I don't see any spine ticks, but I don't see any spine ticks. Looks to be a really strong copy. Bottom edge, super sharp. And the corner is, I think, just holding, just slightly breaking color on the bottom, but I don't think that's too bad. I'm zoomed in pretty tight there. And the upper right corner also looks sharp. So at first glance, I'm thinking 9.8. Flip it over. Back of the book looks really strong. I think what's happening with this one, and why it was marked down in terms of condition, is there. I'm going to see if I can get it for you in the light. But if you look right in the truck, as I'm just kind of circling right there, I think you can see it. There's almost just like a bunch of spots on it. And it's like this very like spotty light film. So it definitely does need a clean. and I don't know what would actually get that off or smooth that out. But when you start to angle it, it just has this like general filth in some spots that I can't really describe. And I want to go back to the front cover and see. I want to say it has it a little bit. It's hard to pick up, but as I kind of move the light around, there's just weird spotting. I don't know what it is, but it could be fingerprints or dirt. So it definitely needs a clean. So I don't think it's a 9.8. Structurally, the book looks amazing. There's so much sharpness around it that I don't really see it dropping below a 9.4, but I'm going to leave it 9.4 clean and press. I hesitate to give it a 9.6 just because I don't know to the extent that that sort of film or whatever would be picked up by a grader and be really a situation where the grader is punishing the book for having that, when I know there should be, anyway, some acceptance of those sorts of things where you have to have a special light and, you know, the naked eye can't really see that sort of thing. I don't think it's a 9.8 by itself. Structurally, it is, but I think that with some of that gunk or whatever that material is that's just kind of sitting on the front and back cover, I'm going to leave it as a 9.4 clean and press, but a super really nice strong copy of Batman 345. All right, fresh bag and board on Batman 345. That one I'll be very curious to see what the decision engine kicks out for that one. I think kind of as a bonus for that too, it's pretty nice. That's a direct edition of her comic in 1981. All right, the next one, another Batman book. This is Batman 307. This book is considered a Batman key. It is the first appearance of Lucius Fox. Now, let's see the condition of this one. Just giving it a first glance in the light. There's definitely some creasing to the cover that would have to be dealt with, so already a press candidate. And then just looking at the level of cleanliness on the book, doesn't look too bad. So I think it's just general creasing and wear on the spine. I definitely see some mixture of color breaking ticks and non-color breaking ticks. Not too bad though. Bottom corner looks sharp. Edge down here looks sharp. Lower right corner also looking pretty good. So all around, a really nice looking copy of Batman 307. At the top, there's just some light creasing around the top edge. I'd already indicated that it would be pressed, so that would have to come out as well. But both corners really nice and sharp here from the perspective of the front cover. Flipping the book over, definitely some dirt / color rub here along the spine. So if I was looking at the front cover, I'm probably settling in at maybe a 9.4, but definitely with the dirt now it's closer to a 9. And then also down here on this corner, just a slight tear where the back cover is pulling away. Sometimes with my fingernail, I can help correct that a little bit, which I just did right there. So at least I just sort of pulled it back to make sure that no further damage or further pulling of that corner creates a tear. But yeah, it's very minor, but still looking at roughly a 9.0 on this one. Definitely in need of a clean and press. Just trying to think about whether or not it should drop to an 8.5. I think for this one, I am going to leave it 9.0 clean and press on Batman 307. Thinking of the other books where I dropped them to 8.5 and 7.5, I think this is in much better condition with similar all-around defects, but 9.0 clean and press is where I'll leave that one. Okay, now this one I chose to give it a fullback, which is just a thicker backing board. You can also get away with this by just double backing each comic. I know sometimes it just comes down to which one costs more depending on supply chain and other factors. Sometimes the fullbacks are more expensive. Sometimes they're like $1 a piece, and backing boards are cheaper, maybe 5 or 10 cents each. So to each their own. I prefer the single fullback. Those look really nice too. If you have Mylar bags, I just go with the standard bag. But the reason I gave this one a fullback is there's going to be some value here, even in a 9.0, even with the ability to improve the grade beyond a 9. I think if it got a nice dry clean and press, it probably maxes out at 9.4, which is still really nice. grade and value for first appearance of Lucius Fox. Next is a issue of Fantastic Four, a really nice 20-cent cover on Fantastic Four 142. Rich Buckler and Joe Sinnott on cover art for this one. This had a little bit of, I would say, just modern speculation buzz on it. It's the first appearance of Darketh the Demon, and was later revealed in the pages of Venom to be the host of the Bedlam symbiote's spawn. So a throwback all the way to 1974 on this, but couldn't pass up on the 20-cent cover. And let's take a look at the condition here on Fantastic Four 142. And again, the way that I start is I kind of like lean back a little bit, let the light do its thing, and I can see already as I move the light back and forth that there's a lot of cover creasing. So it's not surprising that all of these books need a press just because of the source and the age. It's one of the nice things about Infinity Comics is they're just like buying collections. They're most likely cherry picking the better of the books, and then they throw the rest up for sale. They're not really bothering with looking at the books in this level of detail that I am, which is why I like to buy from them. This one does have a number of defects, not just the waves. I can see color breaks here along the edge as the page is just kind of folded over the interior pages. Corner also has some blunting there at the top. Not a lot of like super long color breaking ticks, just a handful of minor hairline ticks, but they'll add up. And then down here in the corner also breaks color. Pretty bad dog ear on this one too, and that flap breaks color. So this is where I'm looking at a book like this, and it's probably closer to a 6.0, somewhere in the 6.0 to 7.0 range, a mid-grade copy, or you could argue maybe an upper mid. It's also got some sort of debris or snot right there, so that would need to be cleaned off. That's pretty gross. Overall, aside from somebody blowing their nose on this comic book, the back doesn't look too bad in general, so if that can be removed, then it's a pretty decent, just sort of off-white type of back cover. A little bit of stress here on this staple that's tearing the page a little bit. And again, with the additional snot on the back, which is not a bonus, I'm probably going to settle in at a 6.0. I think with a really nice clean and press, maybe this one maxes out around 8, possibly 7.5, but as it stands right now, I'm going to settle at 6. I don't drop a book like this below 6, just because if the edges of the book, especially on the top, this is pretty strong, pretty straight, crisp. Same for the bottom. I've noticed that CGC will start to push books down into the 3s and 4s and 5s if we're starting to see a lot of tearing and color breaks on the top and bottom of the book. So 6.0 clean and press for Fantastic Four 142. And what I love about using the BCW Silver Age bags and boards is when the book comes in a little bit wider than your standard size comic books. It fits nicely, but when it goes in the bin, everything is very uniform, and love that. All right, so the last 2 books are from the same limited series. Things I talk about all the time is I'd love a full run or subset or full set of a limited series and have them all in high grade. And this is one of those series. It is Batman The Long Halloween by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale. This is issue 6, the St. Patrick's Day issue. Clearly going to be a tough book for many reasons, and one of the reasons is these books, like the Watchmen books, they have a kind of a gloss to the front cover. So I'm going to be very careful about handling the book, and again, it's why I use the backing board and just kind of slide the bag off of it, trying not to touch the book if I can. Obviously dangerous if you're sitting here trying to balance the book. And if I need to, I can also take a makeup pad that I use sometimes for my own, just not really dry cleaning, but if I do accidentally press on a book and leave a fingerprint, I can kind of wipe it off. So I'll use it as kind of a really cheap and lazy glove just to do something like this, where I can just kind of make sure the book doesn't slide off, and also angle it in the light so you can see the defects, if any. But just moving it kind of back and forth, giving it that initial assessment, just looking for anything like a scratch or something else that would detract from it being a 9.8 candidate. And the front cover looks pretty good. The bottom has just some color loss, just barely on the edge, but really not bad. I would still consider it to be a 9.8 candidate, even with that. Corner looks borderline okay. So again, like 9.6 to 9.8 right now. Question mark, not sure which one it would get, but it does look pretty good otherwise. The book around the staple looks nice and sharp. Top left corner also looks really nice, as does the top right corner. Same as the bottom, though. It's almost like when these books sit on those wire racks and kind of move back and forth, it just starts to rub just slightly off the cover. So I'm going to flip this over, just touching the book here with the makeup pad. And then again, doing the same thing. You can see where this book is really tricky, and also see where maybe it's received a few scratches. And not much I can do about those right in here, where you can see that the book almost completely edge to edge has this really faint line. It's even tough to get on the camera, but right through the March 17th goes edge to edge with some sort of scratch or line. Now, also looking at the back, you can see that this bottom corner has a little bit more damage than I'd originally thought. So it's definitely, in my opinion, a 9.6. I don't know if there's much else that can be done with the book in terms of pressing it out, but I'm going to leave it as a 9.6, most likely because of those faint scratches. I could see a grader looking at this going, boy, this looks great, but it's got a number of these really hairline scratches that are going all over the place on the back of the book. So let's just give it a 9.6. It's not really that perfect of a copy, but I'm fine with that. You know, this could be maybe a potential candidate for a pre-screen or something like that, but I'm going to leave it here, 9.6 with no clean or press indicator. Okay, now I can hold the book as I've put it in a fresh bag and board. In my quest to get all 13 issues, I do have a couple graded in a 9.8, and I did give it the 9.6 on this one. I think that I would just have to kind of run the numbers and see if it would be worth sending it in, and do I want to send it in for a pre-screen or send it in as is. This is where I'll have to have the spreadsheet again help me out in terms of the math and the ultimate decision. The last book was the biggest book in this set of auction wins, and it is Batman: The Long Halloween #1. This was a book that I bid on in a number of auctions and would always get outbid at the very last second. And so I kind of used that bid history to figure out, like, okay, if I really want this book, this is what it's going to take. I ended up obviously with the high bid and won it. And in my opinion, based on the scans, it looked like it could at least be in the 9.4-ish range, but I didn't want to jinx myself at the time, but looked also like a 9.8 candidate. This particular issue, when I was reviewing the scans and so forth, based on what I could tell from the information I had, it was worth putting in that max bid where I had the data from previous auctions to win this copy. Okay, so similar to the other book, this one almost has a matte finish, and then it's glossy here in the cat and the jack-o'-lantern. I'm still going to kind of use the makeup pad to assist me with holding the book just in case, but already at first glance, something I'm noticing is down here is some color loss on the right edge. Again, that's going to be borderline. If that's the only defect on the book, I think it still gets a 9.8, but it's very much possibly pushing the book into a 9.6, and then just a couple of edge ticks, like right here, and then also right here is the second one, just above the makeup pad. So with that, it's probably in the 9.6 range. I'm going to try not to drop the book. The edge, which it's a thicker book, square bound, so I'm going to hold it on its side too to take a look at that. Right at the top, I think that looks really strong, surprisingly strong, at least from this perspective. Same thing down here. Usually the corners get really dinged up on these square bound issues, but this looks like a really nice copy. There was no photo of the edge of the book the way that we're looking at it now anyway. This was something else I remember from this auction, was this dot right here. So I think that it's possible that some people shied away from this copy because of that dot, but when I looked at it, I was almost assured that it was like a printing error or printing defect and not something on the book itself, and that's what it is. So it was not a chip from the book. Yes, that affects presentation, which I've mentioned, but it being on the back cover, if you're thinking about how a book is typically presented, it's the front cover that gets the most scrutiny. There's another sort of circular printer image down here just above the S in direct sales. Not too worried about that one, as it's quite faint. That corner possibly just slightly rounded, as is this corner back here, but again, I don't think that's too bad. I think as is, I want to give this one a 9.6. It's a really, really strong high-grade copy. Really happy that I spent the money to get this one. Again, I would have to run the numbers to think about whether or not that should be sent in through a pre-screen, or just go ahead and send it out for grading and accept whatever grade it is, because it is such a nice high-grade copy. I'm going to officially give it a grade myself as 9.6. So there we go, Batman The Long Halloween #1, fresh bag and board, 9.6. I think, it'd be kind of interesting. I don't know if I have a segment of these books in my collection that are 9.6. They have value in 9.4 to 9.8, or obviously 9.8. You can't really press them, can't really improve them. Don't necessarily want to pre-screen them, but it'd be interesting to take like all of these books that I've flagged as a 9.6 and just send them all in and see if some of them get a 9.8, some of them maybe get under a 9.6, maybe they all come back 9.6. I think it would be very an interesting experiment to do that. So this is a really nice assortment of books, and I want to show you the order summary now with the official grades that I assigned to each book, so that we can kind of go through and see from a raw book value perspective, was there any value added as is? And then with a lot of these books needing a clean and press, which ones would you actually send in for a clean and press? And I want to show you the numbers, but I think something else to keep in mind is maybe you can kind of play along. And as I go through each book, before I show you the decision, you want to think about maybe what would you do with the book if you saw the value or you saw the potential value, and then we'll kind of see what the spreadsheet comes up with. So let's take a look at the order summary. All right, this is the order summary for the books that I won at auction back on February 22nd, 2024. I'll first review a summary of the entire order and then go book by book to kind of show you how the decision logic works, and we can kind of play along and figure out, what is it that ultimately the spreadsheet is going to tell me what to do with the book. And I think through this, you can kind of see just how I think and I approach to keeping books raw, sending them off for pressing, getting them graded straight away, and just making all of these various decisions and trying to take emotion out of it, and just using the specific data from what I feed the spreadsheet, and then also the current fair market value and CGC value of the books in the grade that I assigned it. So this is the summary. 8 books in total. I was invoiced $236.75 from Infinity Comics. I do have to pay tax in California of 9.5%, and then was also charged shipping to ship these books. And so what I do is when I'm looking at the total cost for each book, I take the tax for each item and then also the shipping for the total order, and I make sure that those additional charges are added to my total cost, so that I can really make the determination whether or not I should just keep the book raw or submit it for further investment per se. These are the grades that I assigned to each book as I was going through and assessing each book in the shipment. So we have that as a glance, and then right next to it, the cover price fair market value for the book in the grade range, where the grade that I assigned the book falls within that range. and then the CGC fair market value if I were to get the book graded and it came back specifically in this grade that I had signed the book. Now, most of these I had said along the way that they could be improved from a clean and press, so it is that potential that will help drive the decision as far as what I should do next with the book. Now, just wrapping up the overall summary here, if I bring in the total cost, $236.75, adding up each book where the total cost of each book is increased by the tax and shipping. And then you can see the raw value add here being quite negative, a loss of $61.75 based on the total cost of the book, as that total cost is compared against the cover price fair market value. And then I've also indicated the press status, CP for clean and press. The Batman, the Long Halloween books, I did not indicate that a press or clean would improve the book from its current condition of a 9.6. All right, so before I bring in the decision, I want to wipe out the grades here and add them back one at a time. Okay, so the grades have been reset. I'm going to bring in my decision engine. It's just a column here in the spreadsheet that ultimately tells me what to do with the book. So I'm going to go in reverse order here and kind of ask you to play along. So we have ASM 226. I paid $14.43 to acquire it. Ended up giving that book a 7.5. What would you do in this case? And I'll go ahead and plug the grade in so that you can see some of the values. And there it is, 7.5, CGC fair market value of $26, and ultimately a no decision. And a no decision basically means just keep the book raw, don't invest anything further into the book, just because, as you can imagine, the additional amount of money that you would add into the book, I mean, you could see the CGC value being negative already, so it would be a loss to send in the book as is. But then if you were to add the additional fees for cleaning and pressing, for grading, what kind of bump would it get? An 8.0, 8.5? It's just not worth the time and effort there. So we'll kind of go through these one at a time. That was Amazing Spider-Man 226. 201, cover price, fair market value, ungraded, no specific grade, rather, at $28. Knowing that that book's a 7.5, you're not thinking about data and values. You know it can be improved. It's a fun John Romita cover with Punisher and Spider-Man. Makes you think like, yeah, let's get that one fixed up and send it in. It's a 7.5. It's $51 in a CGC 7.5. You're already under if you send that book in as is. If you paid what I did, which was almost $32 to acquire the book. That is a big factor in terms of what I do. I will make exceptions for certain books, but for the most part, even if I have a book in high grade that I've paid a lot for the book raw, then for me, that was my investment. My investment was for the raw book. It wasn't to find the book with a low barrier to entry with a higher upside. There's certainly a lot of those books in my collection, and I act upon those books. But this would be an example of, I saw the book, I knew that it was not a 9.8 candidate, I still liked it, I spent a lot of money, I overspent clearly because in a 7.5 we're dealing with a $14 raw book. So it just needs to stay raw. There's really nothing more that needs to be done with the book. The other thing I'll make note of, I forgot with 226, is the original advertised grade. ASM 226 was a very fine plus, otherwise known as an 8.5, so this one came in under the advertised grade. And ASM 201 was advertised in very fine condition, 8.0, so a 7.5 just under that. Now, of course, I've kind of marked these down, or have been additionally harsh on the books, so there is some variance there. But in general, again, another no decision on this book because it landed in a 7.5, and I had spent $31 to acquire it. Now, just as an example, like let's say my total cost was $1, then you would see the decision would be like, yeah, press that book. It's worth an additional amount of money and investment to improve the book, but there's just a point of no return where there's just not any amount of additional investment that's worth it. You're better off, if you want it slabbed, just to buy it slabbed, or look to get a different copy, a copy in a higher condition, or a copy in a 7.5 for a lot less than what I paid for it. Next up, Amazing Spider-Man 188, a book from 1979. I paid $15.53 to acquire that book. Second appearance of Jigsaw, an extremely dark cover, tough book in high grade. Based on my assessment, kind of the review, what would you do with that book? Is that a book at $15 that you would submit for additional improvement? Now, I gave that book an 8.5, and now you can start to see some of the numbers kick in. 8.5 has a CGC value of $20, and you can see it is another no decision on this. You're better off just keeping that book raw instead of further investing in the book. That one was listed in a VF Plus, so my grade actually matched the advertised grade on that one. Fantastic Four number 142, that was a great 20-cent cover, 1974. I only paid $8 for that book, so you might think to yourself, well, since the initial investment of the raw book was so low, it's probably worth sending in, I would think, especially with the cover just having the general creasing. A press would kind of smooth that out and maybe bump it into an 8.0, and then it would probably have some value, right? So let's plug in the grade of 6.0, another no decision. So even though I feel like I got a pretty good deal at $8 for that book, cover price is saying it's really only a $6 book in fine condition. So it's not that I drastically overpaid, it's just if I were to try and determine a way to get additional value out of it, it's not possible. Now, the next two books are interesting because I did not indicate that either of them needed a clean and press. So this is just going to be a straight up book as is in a 9.6. So now I want to see, will the decision column turn to submit to CGC? And I have that formula specifically set up so that if it does not find a press status for a specific book, but based on what I paid, the CGC fair market value, if there's enough of a margin, enough of a value increase, then it will just say, go ahead and send that book into CGC. I was contemplating, how do I do that? Should I send it under a pre-screen, etc.? Well, let's take a look. Batman The Long Halloween number 6, I gave a 9.6. And even though it has a CGC fair market value of $73, the spreadsheet is also saying no decision here because of the additional fees to get the book graded. Now, you could say to yourself, well, if it cost $41 to acquire the book, and then roughly just doing the math, maybe it's additional $25 to get the book graded, well, why would you not want to submit that? Well, I'm not looking to buy the book raw and invest additional money to have it shipped around and get it graded just to get the CGC fair market value back. It would be more worth my while to attempt to possibly sell the book at a 9.6 and upgrade it and just buy a 9.6 slab outright and altogether. Now, the trick here is to look at the 9.8 value and see whether or not it should be submitted to CGC under a pre-screen, but then there's a lot of risk involved there, and if I feel pretty strongly that it's a 9.6, I'll just keep the book raw 9.6. Same explanation goes for Batman Long Halloween number 1. Now, without looking at the values yet, my guess is that Long Halloween number 1 in a 9.6 should be worth a lot more in a CGC 9.6, maybe even close to $100. Let's take a look here and see what the value is. It's less than issue 6, which is interesting, $64. So I paid more to acquire that book, $58.22. According to the fair market value of the book in a 9.6 raw and CGC, if I really wanted a 9.6, I should have just purchased it already slabbed. Now, obviously, that wasn't my intent. My intent was to try and get it and assess it myself and say, hey, this is a 9.8 candidate. Long Halloween number 6 was listed in near mint condition, as was Long Halloween number 1. They both were listed as near mint. So technically, they graded out better than 9.4. But if I'm looking to further invest in the book and make a decision on it, the decision here is to hold the book raw and just be happy with it raw in a 9.6. Now let's look at the last two Batman books. Batman 345, I spent $32.70 to acquire that book. Love the cover, love the floating head, the skull, first appearance of Dr. Death in the Bronze Age. I indicated that it could be improved with a clean and press. If you remember, that was the one that had some sort of film, couldn't quite understand what was going on with the front and back cover there. And if we plug in the grade on this one, which I gave a 9.4, there is that decision finally for me to take action on this. This one is indicating that this would be worthwhile to send in for a press. And I'll kind of show you why here. We've got the 9.4 grade. It is $47 in a 9.4. $32.70 was the price that I paid door to door to get the book in my possession. And then because it has the potential to be improved beyond the 9.4, that improvement and the margin of the improvement value of a 9.6 and a 9.8 has pushed this book into this category that it would be worth my while to go ahead and press it out. Now, there's no guarantee that this book magically turns into a 9.8. I understand that, but it's all about managing risk reward here. And with a risk of sending this in for cleaning and pressing and off to CGC, there is a high reward here on Batman 345. Lastly, Batman 307, the first appearance of Lucius Fox, $35 book raw. I paid $35 to acquire it, so a nice kind of neutral raw value add, but I'm really interested to see this one, what it says in terms of its fair market value. You'll note here in the description, it was listed as a near mint minus, so I was really excited to participate in this auction for this book because it was listed in high grade, near mint minus from 1979, and it ended up grading out a 9.0, a VFNM, so just slightly one grade under the listed condition, but still in a 9.0 has a CGC fair market value of $112 and the decision to press it. So again, same explanation as 345, where there's enough margin if the book were to be improved where it would be worth my while. I feel like that was probably the steal of the order. I knew what I had to pay to acquire Batman Long Halloween #1, and that's ultimately what I ended up doing to acquire that copy, but $35 for 307, which if I just straight away sent it to CGC and it came back a 9.0, would have added $53 of value to my collection there. Now I'm going to scoot over to the right to kind of show you some of the columns that I use to help me determine the decision, and you can kind of see here that I perform what I call like a press evaluation. And essentially what it does is it takes the next 3 grades above the grade that I assign to the book, and it takes the average. You could argue maybe it should take a weighted average. So like maybe it should be 3x of the next grade, 2x for the second grade, and then 1x on the third grade, because the chance to get 3 grade bumps might be a little bit tougher than getting 1 grade bump. But just to kind of keep things relatively simple, I decide to just average the 3. So the average margin value add of Batman 307, for example, is $44.87, and that is on top of the cost to get the book pressed and graded. The CGC range is simply those 3 CGC values averaged, but then this is the real number that essentially if it's positive or negative. So you can see where the additional cost to press the book, it didn't make sense in the case of the last 4 books, as it would have just cost me too much money with very little potential. So it's really, if I can just kind of summarize, what do these numbers actually mean again? How can I make sense of it? It's the risk of adding some value to the book after I've spent more money to ship the book around, have it pressed, and have it graded. And I'm looking for positive values here. Any positive value for a book where I've indicated that it needs to be pressed would result in that decision to go ahead and send the book for pressing. And it's just a lot of math and a lot of numbers that I try not to like worry about and really zoom in on and figure out and recalculate, because I go through each book and grade them the way that I do and catalog them the way that I do, and also I enjoy getting the books graded. What I realized a long time ago was I don't have the time to sit here and look up the values manually for each one and scratch my head and figure out, like, should I send this book off for grading? Should I get it pressed? I'm not exactly sure. And so I have these formulas that represent how I think about the book built in. And this was a really lengthy explanation. I appreciate you listening and sticking it out with me. If you have any questions about this, or maybe you have some ideas on how you might change the formula, please feel free to leave me a comment. Happy to talk about that with you. But what I've tried to develop is really, let's encapsulate all of that chaotic logic. I mean, I think it makes sense, but sometimes it really is crazy numbers sometimes. And it's far easier just to drop the book in the spreadsheet, assign it the best possible grade that I can give it, and then look at that decision column to help me kind of figure out which stacks, which bins, which queues these books should go in. And if you see some of my recent CGC unboxing videos, those books that I have sent in, the decision to send in those specific books are all driven off of this analysis that I shared with you in this video. Let me know what you think about it. I really appreciate your feedback. Thanks for watching. Happy collecting, and see you next time.